What's up, everybody? Welcome back. John Levesque here. And today I am joined by another community guest. And guess what? He was here recently. He was here with some great success. The video has gone crazy. You guys have a ton of comments. And so I wanted to go ahead and bring back Dr. Flow. Serge, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you, John. What about you?
I'm doing good. The new year is trampling on. We have a new president in the United States. I'm hopeful about that, and I'm getting back into the swing of things. Starting to pick up the work routine again.
And the vaccine is coming up.
And the vaccine is coming up, no doubt. That's another wonderful. I can't wait to have we're vaccinated parties with all my friends.
True. That's true.
All right. So, Serge, we had a great response to the BPM Toolkit. Figured, why don't you come on back and dig in even a little deeper and give people a little bit more feeling of what exactly they can do. We did a good overview of how everything works, and now I think you're going to dive in and show some specifics, yeah?
Yeah, indeed. So today we'll see how this works internally, because I've got a lot of questions about all the features of the BPM Toolkit, and then people say, "Oh, did you create that stuff?" So how can I take a look at what's going on behind? So now it will be a little bit more technical. Well, actually more technical, right? So I will explain how that works. It's no magic. It's just a set of patterns, right? So let's dig in.
All right, cool. Let's go.
So you know me, I'm Dr. Flow. I'm based in Belgium, and I did create the BPM Toolkit. That's all you need to know about me. And so if you remember, the BPM Toolkit is a kind of a case management tool. It's a super approval tool, and it's 100% written with the Power Platform. It's free and open source. It's available on GitHub. Business can create workflow. They don't need to write code for creating their own workflow. We support state machine. Workflow can change at runtime. There's no workflow duration limit. We have task delegation, so people can delegate their tasks to someone else. We have custom task form. We provide a lot of security, pipeline security. All the business process can be visualized live, right? So we have visual representation of the business process. We provide integration with robotic process application, RPA, and you don't have to buy premium license, which is great.
It's quite a set of facts. Yeah.
That's a fact. That's facts. Yeah. So it's kind of layer on top of the Power Platform, right? So it's a layer on top of Power Automate. And actually, it's 100% written with the Power Platform. So you have the source code. You can change it if you want. I provide 61 flows and 4 Power Apps Canva application.
You said 61. Your slide said 71.
It's 71. Sorry.
Okay.
71. And here are the different modules. Again, I don't want to be boring, but I have to explain this. So the BPM Toolkit works on top of SharePoint Online. That's the current version. I'm working on a Dataverse CDS version, which coming later. It's actually, most of the code is written with Power Automate, but I could have used Logic Apps. So actually, you can use Logic Apps if you want. And there are 2 parts in the BPM Toolkit. The core modules, and there are plenty of things in this core module. Let's talk about that now. First, we have a SharePoint access layer, which gives you access to SharePoint. So the data is stored on SharePoint list in this version. I'm going to work on a CDS, a Dataverse access layer. It's not available yet. Then we have a component called a workflow generator, which generates workflow. So you define your workflow logic in a SharePoint list. I showed that in the previous session, previous video. And the workflow generator will generate step for you in the SharePoint list. So Power Apps application can see this step and represent your step visually. I also have a workflow runtime, which is funny because I have a workflow engine running on top of Power Automate. And this run engine is written with Power Automate, right? So that's very interesting. And the reason is that there are some limitation in the workflow engine, the Power Automate workflow engine, which is limitation to 1 year, 30 days. Also some limitation in the approval duration. no state machine. So that's why actually the Power Platform is flexible enough to provide this kind of things, right?
Yep.
So also, I provide support for custom task form. You can create your own custom task form. Notification layer. So if a new task is created, you get a notification in your email. I have a component that I will describe later, which is a case launcher. Also, the system understands the whole business process, not just tasks, not just approval, but the whole business process. So I have a process manager component. You can delegate your task to someone else. So I have a task delegation system. It's not available yet, but I have a workflow optimizer. So we have a system, well, I'm working on a system that can optimize your workflow. Example, if the same person is in the same business process, maybe can we join this step together, for instance, this kind of thing. Team integration. So I demonstrate that in the previous video. So when you have a new case, there is a new conversation that starts in a private channel in Teams. Security module. Security is the core of the BPM toolkit because it can be used for HR. So all the conversation, all approval pipeline should be fully secure. So I will illustrate how that works. I'm working on an archiving component because all the information, the pipeline approval need to be archived for auditing purpose and much more. So these are the core component of the BPM toolkit module. I will show you a few of them.
Nice.
And on top of that, I have a proxy flow. So all the Power Apps application can talk to the BPM core module, but they have to talk to proxy flows. And the reason is that you need to have some kind of elevation of privilege. Indeed, users using the Power Apps application have use their own identity. And if they call flow, well, by default, the user identity flows to the flow, right? And sometimes you want the flow to do more than what the current user can do. That's why we use intermediate layer, which is a set of proxy flows that run with the system account privilege. So this gives you elevation of privilege. And on top of that, we have UI layer, which is the UI component that you saw in the previous video, like the process dashboard with all the business process running, the My Dashboard, which is the place where you can follow the requests that you submit, where you can also approve tasks if you are a manager, for instance, where you can delegate your task. We have what we call a custom request form adapter. So if you want to create your own custom request with your own Power Apps application, you need to use an adapter to communicate with the BPM toolkit. That's just the only thing you need to do. Okay, this is a quick look of the BPM toolkit module. I will show you a few of them because it's technical, so you will see the code. Yes, also, Isabel, so my business partner, is working on the analytics part on the right side. So we will provide a lot of analytics written with Power BI, and we'll provide a process data mining, so a way to have some feedback about how your business process work, if there are any way to improve your business process. So that's very important, the process data mining.
Is that,
and of course,
is the process data mining something custom, or will you be leveraging Process Advisor?
So we'll have two different modules. First, we'll try to hook up the Process Advisor. Okay, and next we will create our own modules as well. Nice. So we'll have both.
Cool.
Yeah. So the basic pattern behind the BPM toolkit is what I used to call the case management pattern, which is the following. You create your own requests, right? Like an order, for instance, or a part-time request. So you have to define your own custom list for each request, right? It's not in the BPM toolkit. In this version, you have to use a SharePoint list. You have to create your SharePoint list. But then your request will become compatible with the BPM toolkit. Okay, so your request will become a case. So when you submit your request, you have to call the adapter. I will show you that later. And then your request become compatible with the BPM toolkit. It becomes a case. And then when you have a case, we have a module that will generate case lifecycle that will generate a workflow, that will generate steps for you. So each case will have steps in a SharePoint list called case lifecycle. So a new request will become a case will have steps, etc. You see, that's the logic here. That's really the core of the BPM toolkit. You understand this? You understand the BPM toolkit. So this illustrates the BPM toolkit data module. So we have, of course, list in this version, right? So in the CDS version, it will be entities or tables. And you create your own custom list here for your own custom request. And then when you submit your information into the list, you have to call the adapter. So you have to fill in an adapter, and the adapter will bring your request into the case, into the system. So you don't have to interact with the system. Just call the adapter. That's it. And then in the BPM toolkit, we have a workflow generator module that will transform your case into a case lifecycle. Somewhere you have to define a workflow associated with your request, and the workflow generator will read this information and will generate steps for you. And then your Power Apps application can read the steps. So that's how we provide a visual integration of the workflow. So this is the SharePoint list called the meta workflow, where the business can define its own workflow. So you define your set of steps, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. You define the role, the people who need to answer, to handle your request. So step 0 will be this team. Step 1 is, we call that actors. If you want additional people to be part of the business process, you put actors in step 1, for instance. Then step 2 is this team. Step 3 is this team. And for instance, step 4 is a custom action, etc., etc. So you define your workflow in the SharePoint list like this. Okay. This is the name of the request. So each request can have one workflow. You can use system action. So feedback means for each request, people will have to provide their feedback. Okay. We can have different other type of action. You can put state machine. You can say if this request has the status negative, so if people say no, for instance, then I will go to these steps. So this one is this one. You see, so you can implement go-to, so state machine, in your business process. So you put that in a SharePoint list. So that's very easy to do. You don't need to use Power Automate. So it's an abstraction on top of Power Automate. It must be easy. So here we have native action. So it's approve, reject, and review. But if you want, you can also create custom action, like creating a document, calling the robot, calling RPA, calling Power Automate desktop, thing like this. So you can create custom action. So it's an extensible architecture. So the core module are the following. You create your own request. You submit your request. So I call that a case. And then in the BPM toolkit, we have a module called a workflow launcher that will read the workflow that you define in the SharePoint list. And this workflow launcher will call the workflow generator, and the workflow generator will generate steps. And then we have the workflow runtime that starts running, and it runs and it runs and it runs. If someone approves or rejects something, the workflow runtime is kicked off, and then it runs, it analyzes what you do, it tries to find the next step, etc. That's how it works.
Okay, it's like
so this is really the foundation of the BPM toolkit.
It's like a flow building flows.
Exactly.
But you're defining it outside of the flow.
That's correct.
That's
you don't have to know flow. You don't have to know Power Automate. IT need to know that, but not the business.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so it's a high level on top of Power Automate if you want.
Yeah.
And so if you want to create your own custom request compatible with the BPM toolkit, you need somewhere to define a request type. So you say in the SharePoint list, I want to define my request of type order somewhere. And then you have to design the workflow for your request. So in the SharePoint list, you specify the steps, the actors, the custom action that you want. Is it an approval? Is it a comment? Is it generating a document? Thing like this. And then you define roles. So we're supposed to handle this step, just an information in the SharePoint list. And then you have to create a request adapter because, of course, your Power Apps application will have to communicate with the BPM toolkit. And today, to create a request adapter, it takes something like 15 minutes. But I want it to be 0 seconds. So in the future, it will take 0 seconds to define the request adapter. It will be done automatically for you. So all of this should be done manually. So you have to go in some SharePoint list, define some steps, but I will provide a wizard that will generate that for you, right? So, and then of course you can recreate your request application, your form application. You can use Power Apps, you can use whatever you want. You can use Java, you can use anything. Of course, I recommend you to use Power Apps because that's an easy way to create application. So let's talk a little bit about the security, because security is very, very important in the BPM toolkit. And you need to understand this. We have 2 security models. I call that the full security model, which is the version which is implemented right now. And I will provide a no security model, not available yet. What is the full security model? Let's take a look at this. So you want to work with HR, and you work in a multinational company based in 2 cities, Brussels and Barcelona. And people want to be able to submit HR requests. So people from Brussels, employee from Brussels, will submit HR requests, and HR in Brussels, so the team HR in Brussels, will handle this request, will manage this request. And it can be more complex because not all HR in Brussels, only people specialize in the kind of request that you submit. So if it's a work time and leave, we have dedicated people who will handle this kind of case. If you want to have a raise approval, for instance, it's another team because security is very important. So in HR, you have specialists if you want. So if you want to submit an HR request to Brussels, this team will handle this request. So for instance, we have the HR support in Brussels and HR supervisor in Brussels. Same teams in Barcelona. That's different people. People in Brussels don't need to see, are not supposed to see what happened in Barcelona, right? So they are completely split for security reasons, for compliance reasons. So this is very important. So you must be able to define a security matrix, and the tool must comply to this security matrix. So we call that security segregation. That's very important. That's key. This slide illustrates an example of a complex permission matrix implemented by one of my customers. But don't waste your time in this. So how did I implement this in the BPM toolkit? The idea is the following. Each type of request need to have a dedicated SharePoint security group. So you have to define a security group for each type of request. And somewhere you need to specify that your request is linked to this security group. And of course, only the submitter, or of course you can submit a request on behalf of someone, and people in the pipeline, the approval pipeline, can see this request information. Only these people. So if in the pipeline, you add additional people at runtime, these people must see your request information. And only these people. Okay? So this is very important. And in terms of implementation, we use the SharePoint unique permission, at least in the SharePoint version of the BPM toolkit. So let's take a look at that. How long do we have? Oh, we still have 40 minutes, John.
38 to be exact. 38.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Oh yeah.
So let's go to the implementation, right? This is the version that you have in the GitHub site, right? So if you go to GitHub, you will get this. You'll have the following solution: BPM Toolkit, BPM Toolkit ALM for the application lifecycle management, and a demo that show you how to implement your own custom request. So if I get into the BPM toolkit, you will see that we have different modules, and the security modules are here.
Wow.
Let me show you that.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. So secure case, secure stuff, etc. So let's take a look at secure case. Let's edit this flow. And it's a big flow. It's a flow that will be called by a flow, another flow, right? So there is a proxy flow that will call this flow. We never call the flow directly from Power Apps. We call them indirectly to have elevation of privilege. And here, this flow, as you can see, will try to find the security group associated with your request here. And it will secure the whole life cycle, so the pipeline, so people who are supposed to be able to handle your case. So look at this. Okay, so we have a lot of code here. And behind this, we call unique permission. So sometimes we use out-of-the-box component, out-of-the-box Power Automate component. Sometimes we have to call the SharePoint API directly. Okay, so it's a lot of complex code. So here you see we call child flow that call the SharePoint API. So we secure the life cycle, we secure the whole business process, we secure your request in your custom list, we secure the case because we have a dedicated list for the case management. So that's a lot of code behind this. This is just one part of the security module.
Wow.
It's a lot of code, but all of this is handled for you. You create your own SharePoint list and the BPM toolkit will secure it. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. That's completely hidden for you.
That's pretty intense.
It's intense. Also, I would like to illustrate quickly the workflow runtime. You see, this is the workflow engine. This is the workflow engine. Let's open that. Let's edit this code. And okay, as you can see here, this guy is triggered when something is changed in the case lifecycle list. Okay, so if someone approve or reject or say no or put a comment, the workflow engine is triggered. And what the workflow engine will do is the workflow engine will try to find the step that is the waiting step, so that you will see that in orange in your Power Apps application. Remember the dashboard with all the workflow? So we'll try to find that, and we'll try to set up the waiting state. And the workflow will first try to find if there is a go-to. Is there a go-to with the logic? If there is a go-to in the SharePoint list that define the workflow logic, then it will set the workflow, the go-to, to the correct location in the life cycle. If there's no go-to, then the system will try to find the next step. Where is the next step? I'm trying to find the next step. Where is the next step? Is it the final step? If it's the final step, then it's over. I will say that the request is finally approved or rejected. If it's not the final step, then I will try to find the next step. Where is it, the next step? Oh, I found the next step. Is the guy a team or is the guy a person? Okay, so depending on whether you are a team or a person, the system will have to do something. Okay, I don't want to get into the detail, but basically that's the core of the workflow runtime engine.
That's wild. There's
there's
a lot of logic defined.
There's a lot of logic, which means, well, implementing state machine on top of Power Automate was actually doable. You see?
Yeah. But that's crazy. It's like a master class in logical workflow expression. Like it's awesome.
True. So let's keep working on this. So I mentioned that the BPM toolkit has an extensibility model. That means by default, when you define a workflow, it's approve or reject. You can specify if when you approve, if you approve the workflow stops or keep working. Okay, you can do that. That's out of the box. But sometimes you want to do more than just approval or reviewing, right? So you want to be able to generate a document, for instance, or call the robot to do some RPA things that manipulate some custom application. So the BPM Toolkit model is open. So the idea is you can create your own custom action. And each custom action is a flow. You remember in the previous video, John,
Yep.
I show you how the workflow can generate documents,
Yep.
or the workflow can call the robot, right? So, and let's take a look at that. How does that work? Well, when you define a workflow in the workflow list, here, beta workflow, it's here. You specify the type of action. Well, it's not a good site. Let me take another site. It's toolkit dev. Yeah, here we go. And let's go to the workflow definition. Right. So here, you see, you can specify that the actor is a workflow. The name is generate document. And to specify which flow it is, you can just put the link to the flow. This is the link to the flow. And the flow here will do what you want. It's a custom flow. It's not an approval. It's just something that will do this. Let me show you the code here. To create custom action, you just need to create a flow, and the flow must start with this trigger when an HTTP request is received and a response. And the constraint is you just need to provide case ID and step. That's it. If you do that, you have a custom action, and you do what you want in a custom action. In this case, this flow generate a PDF document, generate a Word document, and from this Word document, generate a PDF by using the custom connector, whatever, right? But it's a custom action. You put your own business logic here. You don't have to write a custom connector. It's a flow. I mean, just focus on your flow logic. That's it. And when you do this, this gives you a URL that you might have to protect, and you put that in your workflow definition. That's it. The runtime knows that you need a case ID and a step, and the runtime, the workflow runtime, will provide automatically the case ID and the step for you. You don't have to worry about that.
Nice.
See? So that's how the extensibility model works. So I wanted to make it easier than the one we have in Power Automate, because the one we have in Power Automate is very nice, but that's good for IT people, right? And sometimes we want to go faster, because the business need to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I have many questions about the application lifecycle management story of the BPM Toolkit. How do I do that? Well, my organization is the following. I create an Office 365 tenant, and it's a trial tenant. You get it for free, and for free you get 25 users, Office 365 E3, for 30 days. And in this tenant, I create several environments. So in red in the picture, it's a dedicated Power Platform environment. So I have one environment called dev, and in dev, I do my own development, my custom development. And when it's ready, I move that to test. So I have a Power Platform environment called dev, Power Platform environment called test. And for each environment, I have a dedicated SharePoint site in this tenant, right? And when it's ready here, I move that to my customer tenant or to the GitHub tenant. Okay, that's what I put on GitHub here.
Okay.
You see, I've also another environment that I call experimental. So that's where I try new things, but I'm not supposed to go to dev and to test, because I'm just testing new feature to see the limitation and if it works correctly or not. So just for experimentation. But the big issue is, how can you move things from dev to test to customers? Because we use SharePoint site, and in SharePoint site, the workflow use GUID. So we don't have any easy way to move that from one SharePoint site to the other one. So I had to invent my own tool, because doing that initially took me more than a day, 1.5 days. So it was a nightmare. So I did automate these things by doing this. When you download the BPM Toolkit, you get a solution called BPM Toolkit ALM that you can use for all your own needs if you want, your own project. But I use that for BPM Toolkit as well. And in this solution, I have one flow, which is this one, that recreate the structure of the BPM Toolkit. So I provide an Excel document that I put in SharePoint with my list name, and the flow that I show you recreate all these lists and put the GUID right here. So it can take something like 10 minutes. It recreate everything. Boom.
That's wild.
And it fill in the Excel document. So I have my GUID here. My site is ready from scratch. Takes 10 minutes. And then what I need to do is I need to make sure that my all flows will take this GUID into account. So here I have the GUID of my flow in dev and my SharePoint site URL as well. So then I run another flow, which is this one, search and replace, that will try to update all the flows that use this all string, this all GUID, and we replace them with this new GUID. So my flow will go to CDS, will grab the flow code natively in the system, will search for each all string, and we replace the all string with a new one. And we flush the new flow, the updated flow, back into CDS. So I'm not using the out-of-the-box flow actions, administrative action. That I had issue with that. I directly use the common data service, so Dataverse, because that's where the flow are stored. And that worked very well. So deploying the BPM Toolkit now take me 2 hours instead of 1.5 days, because you have to recreate the Power Apps application. So, and people can use this flow for their own usage. So that works.
Man, that's wild.
You see? So it took me a lot of time. It took me months to create that. Just the ALM part and to test that. So, so now the question is, the BPM Toolkit is available. It's in preview. How can I start using the BPM Toolkit? How can I start using it? You just need to go to GitHub, to this location.
It's in the description.
Yeah. And you will get this site. And here in the README, I describe what you need to do. So you will have in the README the BPM Toolkit setup guide, which is a Word document that you can follow step by step, plus a video that shows how I did it. So in the document, in the setup guide, I reference the video minute by minute, okay? Because some people don't like doing that with the video. They want to follow a document. I get that. But sometimes they still want to see some real things, right? Yeah. So you can move from video to the document if you want.
Nice.
And also, yesterday, I provided the BPM Toolkit Developers Guide, where you can create your own request, you can create your own Power Apps application, and your Power Apps application can communicate with BPM Toolkit. And everything will be fully secured, right? Nice. You just need to follow the steps in this document. So I think you will enjoy that. Yeah, by the way, I'm working on a new version of the Developer Toolkit because, as I mentioned, I want everything to be done automatically. So I will provide a wizard to generate the configuration for you, and it will be much faster, right? But you can already start using it today. And the good news is the BPM Toolkit will be in production quality in March or April. Okay?
Cool.
So everything is there.
Nice.
Thank you very much. If you need help, just don't hesitate to call me on Twitter, or just put a comment in John's video.
You'll be checking those comments, Serge?
I'll check the comments. I'll check the comments.
Awesome. We'll both be looking out for comments if you have questions. Serge, one question on that developer's guide, is that also found on GitHub?
Yeah, everything is on GitHub. You go to
Perfect.
GitHub and you will be guided about how to find things. Everything is there.
Excellent.
Okay.
Great.
And I apologize for all the typos, the French typos I might make, because I'm not native speaker, but voila. I hope that you will enjoy it and give me feedback.
The beauty of GitHub is they can help you correct those errors, right? It's collaborative.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So if you see some typos, go ahead and make a pull request.
Absolutely. I would be more happy than to fix that quickly. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. You guys know what to do. There is going to be some more links down in the description. We'll have the GitHub link where you can find this. We'll have some links for Serge so you can get connected to him and ask him some questions directly and follow him and see all his good stuff. But man, other than that, Serge, let me just say thank you as always for coming and hanging out and showing us how amazing, what amazing things you create from that mind of yours.
Thank you for having me, John. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure, and I'm excited to see people start putting this to use. And so if you go ahead and start using the BPM Toolkit, go ahead and let us know. Share your stories with us. Let us know how it's going. Talk to us about your user stories. Would love to hear about how your implementation is, how it's going, if it's saving you time. It's big, important stuff that we share this and use this. And so it's also just as important to us to know that it's working for you. So go ahead and let us know. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you. Go ahead and click like, click subscribe so that you don't miss another video. That's it from me. Much love. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.